so often, it's evident that our culture's flight path has entered turbulence. Everywhere we look, things are getting shaken up. Examples have come thick and fast in recent years. Brexit, Trump, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, COVID. Commentators buzz with speculation, seeking to understand what's going on and predict what might happen next. For our part, when there's political and social change in the air, it's easy to find ourselves swinging around. One moment we're enthusiastic for the possibility of change, other times we're fearful of change. Sometimes then we can worry that those in charge will never listen anyway. We can soon find ourselves passive, cynical, maybe even despairing. The teacher saw the reality of corruption within his culture and the pressing need for justice. He also knew that missteps are only too easy in a politically charged environment, and that's why he says wisdom matters. In verse 1, he describes the effect of such wisdom. It provides explanation for the things around us, but also equips us to do good to others, brightening their faces.
But wisdom is messy, because wisdom involves embracing tension. On the one hand, wise living requires getting stuck in. Obey the king's command, I say, because you took an oath before God. Do not be in a hurry to leave the king's presence. In other words, says the teacher, be engaged. Don't stick your head in the sand. Don't be in a hurry to move on. Don't ignore the issues that surround you. Serve in positions of influence wherever you can. But embrace the tension, because living wisely also involves keeping your wits about you. In his very next breath, the teacher adds, do not stand up for a bad cause, for the king will do whatever he pleases. Since the king's word is supreme, who can say to him, what are you doing? Whoever obeys his command will come to no harm. Do you feel the tension here? The teacher exhorts us both to get stuck in and to serve the ruling authorities, whilst also standing up to injustice. So what if it's not possible to do both?
Earlier in his work, the teacher emphasised that different times call for different responses. Now he reiterates, there's a proper time and procedure for every matter. The teacher might put it like this: there's a time for tact and a time for being outspoken. There's a time for submissiveness and a time for standing up. Wisdom requires learning the time and season for each of these things. Sometimes in God's timing, it's simply not the right moment to stand up for a cause. And this principle explains why God's people have a range of postures in the way that they relate to government. Joseph saved Egypt from famine in the way that he served Pharaoh as prime minister. Daniel and his friends were exemplary employees of oppressive rulers, yet they knew when to stick their necks out and say no to injustice. Esther, the queen of examples, came to see that she'd been placed in a king's court for a particular purpose at a particular time. She risked her life to challenge the king. In doing so, she uncovered a plot, brought its perpetrators to justice, and saved thousands from genocide.
The New Testament embodies this tension too. Its writers call us both to submit to earthly rulers and authorities, whilst also giving examples of Christians defying human government to obey God. So wisdom involves knowing when to stand up for a cause and when to stay silent and trust God with it instead. But wisdom is also messy because it requires us to have the right outlook. Wherever we stand on the political spectrum, it's easy to think that our side solutions are the only good ones. Then we get utterly frustrated with everyone else for not seeing things the same way that we do. It's a division we see played out on social media every single day. But the teacher would urge us to be wary of hanging our hopes onto one individual or one ideology. Utopias will always disappoint us, as will charismatic leaders.
Yet cynicism isn't the only alternative to idealism. Wisdom flows when we recognise that there is much good in government, but also that it has its limits. For this part, the teacher was all too aware of the limits of human authority. As no one has power over the wind to contain it, so no one has power over the time of their death. There is a time when a man lords it over others to his own hurt. There are all sorts of aspects of life we simply can't control. When we overstep our limits and lord it over others, we can cause great hurt, not just to our victim, but also to ourselves. So we must be realistic about human leaders. They can abuse their powers. They may or may not be held to account, and they certainly can't fix everything. We must not expect superhuman perfection from flawed humans, however gifted they may be.
Yet the wisdom of the teacher of Ecclesiastes points to one from whom we can expect these standards. It's impossible to read the New Testament and not to be reminded of the one who had power over the wind and who had power even over the time of his own death. This man came not to lord it over the others, but to serve at the cost of his own life. Around him, even the most downtrodden found their faces beginning to shine. True wisdom in the political area recognises that it's Jesus who's in charge. It recognises that those who sit in the seat of power only have as much authority as he permits, and that he will hold them to account, including for their failure to administer his righteousness and his justice. Knowing this ultimate end can give us perseverance in life's seasons, hope as we serve, realism as we weigh varying human solutions, and discernment as we contend for the good of others.